Hi, I'm Phil Gonzalez, co-founder of the Latino Leadership Network for Washington State. We form so that we can provide to state employees an avenue for networking, professional developing, and mentoring. With this, we feel that we can adapt to some of the challenges that some of our Latino state employees face.
Hi, I'm Denise Mino, and I am the co-chair for the Latino Leadership Network for the state of Washington. We're a group of volunteer state employees who get together and plan professional development events for state employees.
Okay, before I bring up our guest, I'd like to talk about first the learning objectives for today. And before I do that, I want to tell you a little bit about the LLN. Okay, the LLN formed, it was a group of state employees that got together. What we did for about 2 years, we met at lunch. And during this lunchtime meeting, we talked about some of the challenges that we faced in the workplace. So in December of last year, myself and Denise Mino, who is my co-chair, I'm Phil Gonzalez, decided to step up and kind of form an official group. We decided that we needed to look for the future for our young Latinos. So, as a group of state employees, we believe that through networking, professional development, we can strengthen our workforce and support succession planning. We are passionate about creating a better future for our next generation. So that's pretty much what the LLN is about. You can go to the website on Shaw and you can look at our goals, and a lot of it is inclusive to mentoring, professional development, and networking. I'd like to bring up our first guest. Her name is Maya Balan, and Balan is French. Now, I lived in Belgium for a minute, so I can say it that way, Balan. Maya is the director for the Department of Ecology. Now, Maya Balan, she was appointed by the governor, Jay Inslee, in February 2013. As a Mescalero Apache descendant, Maya is the first Native American to lead an executive cabinet agency in the state of Washington. Not new to ecology, Maya served as deputy and then manager of the Water Resources Program for Ecology. While there, she helped sustainably manage the state's water resources for communities, farms, forests, and fish. She served for 15 years as Assistant Attorney General, focusing on complex water law and a broad array of other environmental legal issues. Maya also was a special assistant to the President for Civil Rights and Legal Affairs at the Evergreen State College. Maya was named a Rising Star by Washington Law and Politics magazine 5 years in a row from 2004 to 2008. As a Director of Ecology, she is known for forging creative partnerships and is committed to innovative solutions for the most controversial environment challenges we face today. When you meet Maya, you will quickly learn that she believes anything is possible. And I want to extend that out to you, that if you have a vision, go for that vision, go for that goal, because we believe at the LLN anything is possible. She is a proud mom to 11-year-old Talia, and she is thankful for her wonderful, supportive husband, Bill. Just a few other tidbits about Maya. Maya is known for being a little competitive. She won the 2013 Oyster Slurp contest, edging out the reigning champ. I bet that was interesting.
It was fun.
She loves Twitter. Yes. This is a shameful opportunity to entice more followers. Maya's a serious and loud Seattle Seahawks fan. At this time, let's give a big welcome to Maya.
Thank you for having me today. I'm still coming down after our loss against the Cardinals, which was pretty tough for me because I went to law school at Arizona State University. And so all of my buddies from law school that were, shamed me because I was a Seahawks fan when I lived down in Phoenix were all gloating last night when they beat our Seahawks. But I'll get over it. We'll pull in. Anything is possible, right? We can still get back to the Super Bowl. Thank you so much for having me today. And I don't think I have too much time, so I just want to make sure that I touch on a few things for you today. When I walked in the room, it was pretty cool to see people that look like me. Because that's not typical in the world that you work in and in the world I work in. And so that's why this Latino Leadership Network is so important, because it helps give you a foundation and strength to understand that we're in this together. It's okay for us to be a bridge to different people, to a different perspective, to a different world, and that's part of our role. In my introduction, my father is French American. He's, as we say, non-Indian. He married my mother, who is a New Mexico descendant and Arizona descendant of tribal people. Although I'm starting to get a little curious and thinking I might need to do a DNA cheek swab, because all of my mother's family names are Garcia and Lueres and Ana. And my mom speaks fluent Spanish, and she named me Maya and my brother Pablo. So I'm maybe having an epiphany here that probably my theory is people fall in love. And we lived, my mother's people lived down in New Mexico and Arizona area. She was born in a mining town in Bisbee, right on the border south of Tucson, where a lot of our people went for jobs to work in the copper mines back in the 40s and the 50s. Eventually made her way to meet my father, who's a Pacific Northwesterner, born in Portland, comes from mining and ranching and farming in the area, and raised us children up here in the Pacific Northwest. That's why I thought I would dabble a little bit with my family history and go to, even though I graduated Tumwater High School, I went to the Evergreen State College for my undergraduate, but I went off to law school at Arizona State University. I have a great aunt who lived in Phoenix and many cousins and relatives, and boy, oh boy, was I a Pacific Northwesterner after spending just even one hot month down in Phoenix. I sure missed what I said. I missed the rain and the trees and the running water. So my dad's raising us up here, I think, worked out well for my family. So what I wanted to quickly tell you about is the wonderful agency that I actually have the incredible pleasure to lead. Department of Ecology has about 1,500 employees. And our mission is to protect la tierra, el agua, ¿cómo se dice la palabra para air en español? Aire. So, aire. It's spelled A-I-R-E. I see it in my mind, but I'm afraid to speak Spanish because, like maybe many of your families, my mother was cautious about how she wanted us to speak English from a survival perspective, right? Yes. So she was, more often than not, tried to speak English to us when we grew up. But I know a few words here and there. And I know words like mi hermana and That's what Alfie Alvarado Ramos is, to me on the cabinet. Mi hermano, Jesus Sanchez, who's been a good friend and one of my partners here on the cabinet working these incredible issues. But I think it's an incredible duty and a wonderful privilege to be able to protect land, air, and water in Washington State. We have one of the most beautiful states in the state of the nation. And when I became director, I changed our vision statement. I added 2 key words, and this is what your network reminds me of or reflects on the network. Innovative partnerships. I added to our vision statement that now reads, our innovative partnerships sustain healthy land, air, and water in harmony with a strong economy. And the point of that type of a mission statement is to say, this is important. We must preserve and protect this incredible environment because this is how we end up raising, this is where we raise our families, our familia. This is where we have our jobs. This is the rivers that we fish from to eat and gather food from for our people. This is where our schools are. We want to make sure that our kids that are playing on the playground are not exposed to contaminants like arsenic and mercury and things that are out in the environment. And we have a lot of challenges in the state of Washington in terms of having about 12,000 cleanup sites across the state of Washington, having Hanford, the biggest nuclear cleanup site in the world, is in our backyard in the Tri-Cities. But there's a lot that we can be motivated for in terms of what we get. And in the opening comments by Philip, talking about making sure that this is the next generation of Latino youth have all of the opportunities that we had and more. And that's what environmental work is about, is being able to look forward to the next generation. And as many of my people say, 7 generations ahead. The decisions we make today, if we can think of what the impact will be 7 generations ahead, and that you feel good about that, then that is a decision you must make and execute and support and stand by and be steadfast and have faith in. And so the environmental protection, I think sometimes for our people of color, it may feel like a luxury because we're just trying to survive, right? We're trying to get our kids into school. We're trying to be a first-generation college graduate. We're trying to put food on the table. And thinking about, let's clean up the quality of this water here may not feel like a priority because we're just trying to do the minimums. And my tribal heritage and my tribal upbringing instilled in me this deep foundation of the fact that our environment, la tierra, is important to us. El agua, which is what we drink, the fish that swim in this water that we eat. We must keep the water clean enough to protect those fish, pescado, so that we can then have a healthy body and mind and soul and pass that on to the next generation. And so it's something that I want to instill today is I am looking for Latino leadership in the environmental community. And we have several leaders like Miguel, who you'll meet later today, who has been steadfast in trying to make sure to move those messages forward, that our land and our air and our water matter. And they matter not just here and now for the immediate needs that we have, but into the future. The drought put a huge exclamation point on how important water is, and that we all must come together in those times of shortage and figure out how we can all get enough to get by for our family, for our farms, for the fish in the streams and the endangered species in the world. And climate change is a big issue as well, and that's a big priority that we're working on at the Department of Ecology. People of colored communities are some of the most impacted communities when it comes to environmental issues. Finding mines by tribal lands, for example. Having communities that are fishing from the lower Duwamish River, where they shouldn't be eating those fish because of the long-term legacy contamination that has happened from some of our industrial activities in our state. These exponentially impact people of color, Latinos, Native Americans, Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders. We must step forward and show leadership in cleaning up these contaminated sites, in keeping our water clean so that we can drink from it, our groundwater in the Yakima Valley, up in Whatcom County, when we have increased nitrates and we're having to take bottled water to our families because they can't drink the groundwater because of legacy contamination that has occurred. These are all things that we should coalesce around, and I'm happy to lend my support and do this work here for the state of Washington and have an influence in terms of the future that we're going to leave for our children, your children, grandchildren, and our next several generations. So I am very excited to have met many of you today. Hope that you'll continue to look at opportunities to work on environmental issues. Keep an eye on positions we have open right now. I'll be recruiting for the next nuclear waste program manager to run our nuclear waste cleanup in Hanford in the Tri-Cities. Incredibly huge, important recruitment that I'll be involved in. And always looking for our leaders, like folks, you in this room, to open yourself up to those types of opportunities and possibilities. So, and one little quick story about what kind of got me in the direction of doing environmental work. When I was at Evergreen State College many years ago, there was a big flood on the Chehalis River. Big fish kill, farms were flooded out, heavily affected our communities down in the Centralia area. And I was clerking at the time for then Congresswoman Jolene Unsold and answering the phones when the flood was happening of people calling saying, help, we need help, how do we get through this? I don't even understand what my insurance policy will or will not provide for me with by the fact that my farm has been flooded. And the connection between that environmental impact and the needs of the people, I thought a good way to maybe try to further my ability to work on that would to go into environmental law. And so I did. I went from doing science and math and neurology and neurobiology to throwing in my application to go to law school. Arizona State University called my mom, the dean of the law school, called my mom to say, we got a good school here. My mom's question, is there air conditioning? When the dean guaranteed her there was air conditioning, she finally let me go. But I did want to come back here to the Pacific Northwest where I grew up and do my part and had the incredible benefit of being able to work as an assistant attorney general practicing law and then becoming what they call the client, going to Department of Ecology to run a program, and then the governor appointing me as director. So it's absolutely been a privilege and an honor. Happy to meet many of you. Look forward to communicating with you in the future about opportunities at my agency, and want to thank you for your friendship and the kindness in your invite today. So I'm glad to stay here and answer questions too after your event. Thank you so much.
Well, that was very informative. Also, member Jobs. You know, a little bit about Maya and myself. Actually, our families, our roots come from the same place, from New Mexico. So.
And there's air conditioning in New Mexico.
There is. Before we bring on our next guest, I'd like to talk a little bit about our learning objectives. Today, you should be gaining a better understanding of the legislative process in our state with our next guest. Meet at least 2 new people to add to your personal network. How many have you done that? Meet at least 2 new people. Okay, we good. Okay, so some of us have a little work to do. Feel supported knowing that you now belong to a network for Latino state employees. Before I bring up our next guest speaker, I'd like to bring up, let me do this first. I'd like to acknowledge Minor and Gloria. Raise your hand. They work for Commission on Hispanic Affairs. They come and assist the LLN. So I want to thank Sean and those folks for helping us out, because they do a lot of our administrative help. We couldn't do it without them. Denise Mino, my co-chair, who is my rock. I have to tell you, she is my rock. I'd like to announce Abe Cortez. Abe Cortez comes he works in Seattle, but he comes all the way down here to videotape our sessions. And our videos will be coming on the CHA website probably in about 2 days. Our video with the Lieutenant Governor, right now it's being edited. So that should be on the CHA website. So if you want to, so if you didn't get a chance to attend that event, you can come back and look at it and see what good words that Lieutenant Governor Brad Owens had said. And also, our executive sponsor, Alfie Ramos Alvarado, I'd like to bring her up because she will be bringing up our next guest. But, you know, one thing, Alfie is another rock. I'm telling you. Without Alfie, I mean, things wouldn't move along so smoothly. So, thank you, Alfie.
Thank you. And I know a little bit late to in arrival because I know exactly where he was at the goal floor of the Results Washington. Is Uriel Iñiguez, who is the executive director of the Commission on Hispanic Affairs. Uriel, thank you for your support. And I will tell you, Governor Inslee has probably one of the most, if not the most, diverse cabinet and executive group of any governor in Washington state ever. And you're seeing some of our faces already. You've gotten to meet some of us. There are many more out there that I know will be brought in here for you to be able to meet. And highlighting a state director is going to be pretty much of a norm so that you know who is at the leadership of state organizations in Washington state. And that's a rare opportunity that a lot of people have, that you're having in here, to be able to, up close and personal, be able to know who the state leadership is. And now I am really honored to be able to introduce to you a fellow veteran, Coast Guard, Miguel Pérez-Gibson, and I'm going to just read a little bit of his bio and then let him talk with you about himself. He was born in the Bronx, New York City, raised in Southern California, and has made his life in Washington state. Miguel has many parts of his life. He's a musician, a guitarist, you know, and I understand a pretty darn good one, and I've never heard you play one of these days.
Maybe today.
Yes? He said maybe today. A forester, a licensed mental health counselor. What a portfolio. I mean, what an amazing portfolio. He's a contract lobbyist, deputy director for a state agency, a yoga instructor, policy staff for the state's House of Representatives, and currently, and most importantly, you know, one of the most demanding jobs, you know, aside from Department of Ecology, you know. He is the executive director for the legislative relations of Governor Inslee's office. So he is the legislative person that is day in and out with Governor Inslee working on the issues of legislation. And especially during session, that is almost a 24/7 kind of job. Miguel is delighted to be on the board of the Olympia Symphony, and he is a Latino, and we are proud of him. And I'd like for you to please help me welcome Miguel Pérez-Gibson.
All right. So help me out. This is fine. Let's just do this real quick. I know I don't have very much time, but those of you who your Latino heritage, you would identify as coming from South America. Raise your hand. Just want to get a sense. One. What part? Just curious.
No, when you said South America, is that Mexico?
South.
Oh, South.
No? Okay, just curious. From the Caribbean? All right. And then from Central America? Okay. And then from Mexico? New Mexico? And the Bronx. All right, the New Euricans right here. Okay. It's funny it's just kind of fun to do that and get a sense of our heritage. Anyone notice when the Pope addressed Congress that he talked about coming to this continent, and he viewed this continent is from all the way down to the tip South America and all the way up. And I think he gave the sense in that talk about this oneness that we all share with this part of the planet. And again, I think for me, he was really trying to emphasize the barriers that we have. And of course, they're not just the geographical barriers, but also, I think, societal barriers. So it's good to be here with the State Latino Leadership Network to just talk about networking, which is part of why we're here today. And I got my marching orders to talk a little bit about my path, my history, and then a little bit about, give you a little better understanding of the legislative process. But first, I want to just talk about Maya for a second. And I think this is an interesting part of what I want to talk about in terms of networking. I think it's really important in terms of your careers that you do network in official places like this, but just across the schoolyard, with your kids, with the people you come in contact, because it really, Washington is a small state, Olympia is a small town, and those relationships will serve you well in your career. And Maya and I think, would be a good example of that. I'm older than Maya, but we went to school together. She was at Evergreen when I was there. I knew her brother. We did radio shows around the same time. When Maya was an AG, I was working in the Department of Natural Resources. When I did independent work for tribes, I met Maya in her official capacity in ecology. So our paths have crossed numerous times. And now, of course, I'm in the governor's office, and so it's been interesting to me just to watch that. And also, I want to just stress to you the importance of networking. But I guess networking is not the right word. Just those friendships you make are important, professionally and personally. And you're so familiar, I just can't place you.
Yoga.
There we go. Namaste. Okay. Case in point. Oh gosh. I don't. To talk about myself is a really long story in terms of my path. But let me just try to make it as brief as I can and get to the main point. So the brief story here is any PERS 1 employees? You're all retired. Oh, we got one. Okay. Hey, Jesus. Okay. So I started working basically as a janitor in 1974. So 44 years ago. I had no clue, no idea where my path was going to lead me. All I knew was that I was going to put one foot in front of the other. So, as you know, my roots, my background, my mother didn't graduate from elementary school. My father didn't graduate from high school, first generation. I didn't really graduate from technical college until after the military on the GI Bill. That's when I got involved in forestry. I didn't get a bachelor's degree until I was 40. But I was the class speaker at our graduating class, and I do remember my ending remarks. I didn't know how true it was at the time, but our future is so bright we don't have to wear shades. Master's degree sometime after that. All that was done while working and raising kids, and never really even knowing, where I was going or where the path was going to lead. But a couple of, I guess what I would say, what I would like to share with you that I thought was important, that I learned in career paths was, number one, don't let them get you down. I spent, at one point in my career, 10 years in a position level where I just could not, I just was bumping, could not get anywhere. And finally figured out the only way I was going to get anywhere was to do lateral kinds of transfers and go to jobs that were really not desirable. I'm sorry to say that, but that's what you have to do sometimes. And I learned a lot in doing that. So I had lots of sideways movements in my career where I got to work with other people in other departments and got to know people. And when I figured out that that was good for me, I actually turned down a promotion so I could do another transfer because I thought that was more important, the longevity of my career. So I just want to point that out as not always think of your path as this sort of straight up climb. A lot of it can be sideways, and I think that's one thing I wanted to share was just that, and then education. I don't want to forget that. So I think those are the two things, and it just doesn't have to be formal education, but whatever certifications, programs, I think all that is growth. So personal growth helps with professional growth and who you are as a person. And ultimately, I think, honestly, that's probably the thing that makes the most difference in who you are as a person and what you bring to work every day and what people see and what they recognize and who they trust and the personal integrity and those kinds of things. How am I doing on time here?
You're okay.
Okay, so maybe just I want to just talk about my kids for a minute, kind of look in both directions. So, like I said, where my roots, my family my background. And then so in our house, it was really important for everyone to know who they are and where they came from. And so consequently, my kids, their Spanish is much better than mine, and their knowledge of who they are is really exceptional. They're exceptional people in that regard. 4 kids, 3, but I'll just give you one. My son, I just got to do this, just to kind of complete the loop here. So, as typical, the Jibaros in here, if you were up in the mountains, right? We may come from the same road, by the way. That is road, right? And up on the hill of Catalina. You look familiar to me too. So my son decided to close the loop. And so when he went to college, he went back to Puerto Rico and he went to UPR and graduated with his degree in geology from UPR. And then got his master's here in Washington. And now he's working with in early learning. And I guess I just want to say that too. It's really important to look both ways, forward and sideways, and help the generation that's coming up behind as well as we're trying to advance our own career. So I just wanted to point that out. Not that I needed to do that, but. Okay, so I think I'm ready to move on. Okay, so I got to say then a couple things about our governor. He's the real deal. I'm talking out of school a little bit, so I got to stand in front of the camera this way. So you know what? When the courts decided that Yakima was not in compliance with the Voting Rights Act, it was a down day for him. It was a day off or something. Anyway, he ran in the office in jeans, boots, and he's like, I want a letter. I want it to go out today. I want it to go out to the city of Yakima. I want it to say, this is not our state. Our state can do better than that. So we are a year and a half later. We have 3 Latinas. Yeah. Can we just give a round? Real ID, the governor totally understands the consequences of that. I'll just say that in terms of legislation, in terms of working on Real ID, he totally gets where that goes. And then finally, real quickly, Chris Liu and Alfie are working to make sure, in just terms of significant effect, that we are going to give more, make sure contracting is more equitable in this state in terms of businesses, disadvantaged businesses. So, and I don't know what the percentage is, but it's not good. It's very low.
1%.
What is it again?
1%.
Okay. All right, so now I guess to move then to, we've got, so here's just kind of the, in a nutshell. So it's a bicameral, obviously, House and Senate, and we have a bipartisan, basically a bicameral operation in this state right now in terms of the Senate being led by Republicans, the House being led by the Democrats. But in both of those cases, it's not, there's a real mix because our state is run by districts and there's 49, and within those districts, the population of Washington is really diverse, and even within that Senate House caucus, both the R's and D's, there's a lot of diversity among those folks, among the members that are there. So what I've learned as a legislative liaison and in working, I work with individuals more than I work with members of a particular caucus or party and who they are and what they represent and what's important to them. So as we march along, that's really the key to success, is looking for those places where we can find places to work together. But it's tough. That's why session lasted
6.5 months.
Thank you. A long time. We do have, as you know, some real clunky parts to the way our state runs with the terms of our tax system. Just because our economy does well doesn't necessarily mean that our economy, our revenues in the state does well. The sales tax doesn't necessarily reflect the economy. Ask Jim McIntyre, our treasurer, to explain it, but it's a complicated situation. We put a lot of money, though. This was done with this bipartisan, bicameral legislature into early learning. A historic amount of investment. So, and transportation. So we can get things done. It's just, it takes a lot of working it, basically. And I said early learning, right? Yes. So, and of course, you know, climate is a key issue for the governor, and you'll be seeing us talking more about that as his term goes on. Having said that, I am the first Latino appointed to the governor's team in the state of Washington, and I'm proud to be that, and proud to be here with you today.
Or you have some folks that you know would like to sponsor us to do a conference, even if they want to just do light refreshments or they want to set up a table. We need your ideas. We want to promote professional development and networking. We want to see you get better jobs and continue to move up the ladder.
Thank you.
We want you to be able to feel confident enough to apply for those jobs that you see out there. We want to give you the tips, the tricks, you know, the ins and outs. The folks in HR only know the secrets, right? We want them to come and help us learn how to get those, apply for those jobs and to be able to progress in your careers. So that is the goal of the group. Again, leaders of today, preparing leaders of tomorrow. And I want to acknowledge all of you and thank you for being here today. So thank you very much.